So, I got to play Elden Ring this morning. I played for about 2.5 hours as part of the closed network test. I was lucky enough to get a code from the lottery. So my initial thoughts, sorry, I'm recording in my car. I'm working around my work schedule. My initial thoughts are, it is pretty much everything that I wanted it to be. It's very open. In the test that some of the media people got to do early, they fought a boss at the very beginning in the tutorial cave that I didn't fight. I don't know if I skipped him somehow. It seemed pretty linear, and I don't know how I would have missed him. Maybe they removed him because he was too easy, because it looked like they were taking him out in 2 hits. And then after the tutorial cave, which was almost nothing, I walk out into a big open world. There's an NPC in front of me. I was not able to record any of this off the Series X. It was all disabled, so I couldn't even take screenshots. I couldn't do any capture video, so unfortunately I can't show it to you. But you walk out of the cave, out into this big open world, and there's a giant dude in gold armor on a horse right next to me. Basically, I could walk over and fight him. So I walked over and fought him, and he killed me like 3 times, and I was very rusty, and I wasn't very good with the controls yet, and still trying to figure things out. I didn't go back and fight him in the 2.5 hours that I played, because the world is so just full of stuff to do. I wandered around for so long, and I was always running across new stuff, new exciting, like, interesting things for me to explore. I went through a couple of dungeons. The first dungeon that I did kicked my ass a few times, but there were like these little rat dogs. I don't know how to describe them, and they were very fast, and in groups they would just swarm me. And they have summoning stones at the beginning of, as far as I know, every dungeon that I went into 3. So there's a site of grace, which is the bonfires of these games, and then a summoning stone area thing. It's like a little bone in the ground. So I set that up so that I could answer calls, and then I got summoned into somebody else's world, and we went through the dungeon while I was still struggling with it. We went through it, and we fought the boss and just crushed it. Not difficult at all. Smoked him. And then it kicked me back to my world, and I went through the dungeon alone that time, and it didn't count. If you get summoned into somebody else's world, it doesn't count your progress. So it didn't. I get like the runes from defeating the boss, which is this game's version of Souls, but I don't get the progress for defeating him. So I had to go through, and when I fought him, he wasn't a very hard boss, but I made a couple of mistakes, and I swear I beat him with 1 HP left. I mean, almost died. Just squeaked by the skin of my teeth. But I beat him, and then I went back to another dungeon that I had seen in the distance, and I tried to go through there, and I got summoned into somebody else's world for that one. And we made it pretty far, and then I think he didn't know where to go, and I didn't really either, but there was like a pathway down, and like an elevator down, and I took it, and he took it, and then he went back up for whatever reason. So I kept going on my own, and I died and got kicked out of the world. So I don't know how he did. And then I tried to go through it a couple of times by myself, but the enemies were way too powerful for me. At the beginning of the game, you can't level up, and you don't have a steed. To unlock those, you have to go to 3 different sites of grace out in the world. So the dungeon sites of grace don't count for this. I didn't know that until I quit. I was exploring like a swampy land. There was a giant dragon that I just ran away from because I wasn't ready to fight him. And like some guys that spit poison, and it wasn't like the crazy hard poison levels from the Dark Souls games, especially since this is pretty much the beginning of the game. But I was still level 5, which is what they start you at. I had the basic equipment. I didn't have any summons. I didn't have any of that. So I went back to the very beginning area and explored around and then I talked to the starting NPC that you first meet. I talked to him again, and he had more dialogue choices or options that I didn't get the first time around. So he told me to keep looking for these sites of grace, and he called me maidenless a couple of times, which is pretty rude. And he said that there are it's like gold dust in the air that kind of reminds me of the wind from Ghost of Tsushima. It's not as prevalent as that, because it's just at certain areas. Like if you're at a site of grace out in the world, there will be gold dust pointing you in a direction. So I followed that from the first site of grace that I had found, and it took me to the second one, and then I followed that to a third one, where then I have there's a cutscene where you talk to this lady whose name I've forgotten, and she gives you your steed and the ability to level up. So that made a huge difference. I was able to level up 9 times right off the bat. Right before I got to that camp, that site of grace, there was a big camp with maybe 15 enemies in it, and I was able to stealth my way through the whole thing. I think I alerted 1 or 2 people that I had to actually fight, and everybody else I just backstabbed. It was pretty easy. The stealth is pretty simple. It doesn't really work in a lot of situations. This felt like a stealth area, like it was built for that, which I thought was really well done and really set up for it in a accessible way. And then from that side of grace, you move into a castle area, and there's a big boss that you fight, which I'd actually stumbled upon earlier out in the world. It's not the same boss, obviously, but it's the same creature, just out in the world roaming around. He killed me once. So I fought this guy, and he's got archers backing him up, so you can get him to attack the archers on accident, which helps a lot. And then he was pretty easy to take down. You have pretty powerful, I can't remember what they're like, ashes or something that are attached to your weapon. You can only have 1 attached to your weapon at a time. I found 3 throughout my playthrough so far. You start with one that strikes lightning on the ground in front of you. Then I found one that shoots like a burst of air in front of me that did a lot of damage. And then I found one that does a triple thrust with my sword that I hadn't used on an enemy because I found it right toward the end of my playtime. I played as the Bloody Wolf, so there are 5 different classes that you can play as, and Bloody Wolf seems like more of a melee class. I walk around with a big sword and a shield. You have to dual wield your sword to cast your weapon spell. I am not good at parrying, which would probably help me later into the game, but I have not gotten enough practice with it, so I'll keep working on that. I get to play again tonight at 9, and I'll try and do a reaction video tomorrow morning for that playthrough. There are a lot of things that I did that I haven't touched on, but I don't want this video to be too long. One thing that really stood out to me about this game is how just full of life the world is. There are just creatures everywhere. I find whole herds of sheep and rams that would attack me. The sheep wouldn't, but the rams would. There were little squirrel things and little foxes and eagles, and there's just life everywhere. And you can pick up plants that you can use for crafting all over the map. I fought this weird plant creature that spawned smaller plants that shot out poison, and it cast spells on me. And I beat that. He was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. There was I'm just walking around, and I hear shimmering in the distance. So I hunted down, and there was I think it was Crimson, or I think there's Cerulean and Crimson scarabs. And if you kill them, depending on what color they are, I guess the crimson ones refill your Estus flask uses. And the cerulean ones refill your FP flask, which is your magic flask uses, which I thought was pretty cool. I only found one at just roaming around, but that was something that I hadn't heard anybody talk about in any of the previews that I've watched. So that was an exciting find, because it's like, hey, I don't even know if these guys found this guy. I found there was like a pit in the ground where somebody was screaming or groaning in it, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with that. So I left it be. There were a bunch of blood stains around it where people had jumped into the pit and died, so I didn't try that. There's just stuff everywhere. I was running around on my horse, and a giant rock creature crawled out of the ground and started fighting me, killed my horse, and I had to run away. I love the way the game feels. The combat feels very much like Dark Souls, but still somehow faster paced. I didn't use any of the summons. I bought 2 from a merchant, but I didn't have a chance to use them. But I hear that they're really overpowered and really useful in certain situations. I think you can only use them in certain situations. But they have unlimited uses, which is nice. You start with 4 total Estus Flask uses, and you can switch, you can trade them off if you want to do FP or HP. So however many you want on each, like in Dark Souls 3, it's very similar to that. I did 4 into HP because I get hit a lot and I'm trying to survive. And I don't use a lot of magic in Souls games, although I did in this one because it was so accessible, because it was just attached to my weapon. And all I had to do was hit, I'm playing on Xbox, so I hit Y to dual wield the weapon, and then I think it's left bumper to cast the spell. And it's as easy as that. I cannot wait to get back into this game. I cannot wait to fight more bosses and explore more and see all that it has to offer. I found one area that was walled off that looked like there was a staircase going down into maybe a dungeon. And I tried to jump, because you can jump. The jumping mechanic is really good and very different than normal Dark Souls games. You just push A and you jump a pretty good distance, and the world is built around it. So I thought that was really cool. And I tried jumping on walls around it to jump into the walled off area, and I think maybe it's possible to do it, but I couldn't pull it off. I tried. Maybe it's just blocked off because of the tutorial, or not the tutorial, because of the preview. It's it's not a full game, and there's lots of developer implemented misty walls that you can't get around on the edge of the map. Anyway, that is my impression of this game so far. I can't wait to get back into it. I'm sorry this video was so long. I can't wait till this game comes out in February, because I know there's way more to explore, and this is just a tiny portion of the map. I will try and do a second impression video after I play tonight, so look out for that. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe to my channel or whatever.